Oh, a microphony.
And a phony at the mic.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
The Doctor of Discernment is now online.
You know, much like my show, in that it's a local reaction to things that are happening on a federal level.
Dispensing a daily dose of common sense. No prescription required.
Wow, do I have a boatload of stuff for you, from the crazy to the absurd. Let's start getting into it because, I mean, it is bizarro world out there. And I say, if it's obvious to me, should be obvious to everybody. Oh, wow. Who could have seen this coming?
This is the Fourth Hour with Greg Belfrage.
Hold on to your butts.
Broadcasting from my basement bunker beneath Tello Radio. Welcome to the Fourth Hour. Let me get a little more audio there. Hey, it's hope you had a great weekend. Good to be with you again. So Tim Walz has dropped out of the Minnesota governor's race. I mentioned this late in the program this morning. So he released a statement saying that he reflected on the moment with my family and my team over the holidays. I came to the conclusion that I can't give a political campaign my all. He said, every minute I spend defending my own political interests would be a minute I can't spend defending the people of Minnesota against the criminals. I have a hard time keeping a straight face, sharing Wall's words. The criminals who prey on our generosity and the cynics who prey on our differences. So Amy Klobuchar is apparently, she is expected to jump into the ring, potentially. Or at least they're saying if she were to toss her hat into the ring, Klobuchar would join 3 of her Senate colleagues in running for governor. So I don't know as to whether or not she will. We'll see. But this will, some of what Wall said in his statement today was, and I shared this during the last word this morning. My reaction to this, Tim Walz is just, he's somebody who's motivated by hatred. I see that very, very clearly. That's what I see. I just think he's somebody who's motivated by hatred. He's motivated by his hatred for Trump. He's motivated by his hatred for Republicans. He's motivated by his hatred for anybody who doesn't agree with him. It's just, he has just been too much. So good riddance would be what I'd say. But so Tim Walz will not be running. Now there's another story. As we were talking about what was going on with Minnesota's daycares and the funding and what was happening there, the amount of money then that was just being stolen from the people of Minnesota and as well as U.S. taxpayers. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services is rolling back a Biden administration rule that did not require them to verify whether kids were attending federally funded child care centers. So the Trump administration is saying, we are going to go back and we want the federal government to verify that we actually have kids who are attending these centers. And it is absolutely incredible. So of the regulations that the Biden administration got rid of were regulations that were beneficial toward preventing this kind of fraud that we saw in Minnesota. And I'm just like, not a surprise. Not a surprise. They were instituting all other kinds of regulations, making things more difficult and harder. And in cases where you make sure that the fraudsters are exposed and can be found and rooted out, no, them they're going to protect. It's just absolutely amazing. So the Department of Health and Human Services announced this today. They will restore attendance-based billing And that'll stop states from paying the child care centers up front. So we'll do it based on the number of kids you have that attend. Based on that, then here's how much money we'll provide afterward. So you don't just give the money up front. That was just a bad idea. The Joe Biden administration, I believe, will go down in history as just the worst ideas ever implemented. If at some point, the federal government actually topples, it'll be because of stuff like this. So the big thing we talked about on the radio show this morning was the ouster of Nicolas Maduro. He has not been in court yet. He was taken to court earlier this morning. That hearing has not begun yet, according to Fox News Radio a little bit ago. So New York Post has this story. The residents in New York City, in Little Caracas, celebrating the ouster of Maduro. And this, I thought, was a very touching story. It was, these are comments coming from a 41-year-old car salesman who currently lives in Queens. He was originally from Venezuela. And he said of Maduro's ouster, he said, it's amazing news because we've been suffering with this guy for a long time. So it's been more than 26 years that we've been waiting for this. So now that the U.S. Army went all the way over there to take him out, that makes us all so, so happy, he said. He said, for me, it is always so dangerous to go back because I was always against this. He was against Maduro. And he said, so for every single person that is against it, they're in danger. So he said his mother actually gave him the news from Venezuela. She called him, and he described this as a moment of hope. He said she was crying. My mom was crying in praise. She was like, we can't believe it. We were waiting for this for so long. You have no idea. Pretty crazy. So she was crying. She was happy as you see these people who were, originally from Venezuela celebrating. It's just amazing. Another 19-year-old waiter said that a party of roughly 50 people celebrating Maduro's ousting spontaneously erupted at the restaurant where he works. And he moved to the U.S. from Venezuela about 3 years ago. And he says his 60-year-old grandmother's still in Venezuela. He said, we've been waiting for this moment. It's just absolutely amazing. And you see the celebrations that have been ongoing. So, this is why this caught my eye. Nicolas Maduro, guess who's paying the bill for his attorneys? Yeah, we are. The U.S. is going to foot the bill so that he can be represented. And that's all right. I'm fine with that. Not surprised. So they are slated to make their first appearance in federal court today. And there are 4 different charges that he is facing: narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices. So it's pretty crazy. These machine guns had quite a number of them. So Maduro and his wife are in separate solitary cells. And we've seen others who have been in that same facility. I think Mexican drug kingpin, El Chapo. He was there. Sean Diddy Combs was there. Luigi Mangione. He's the one who killed the CEO of United Healthcare, Brian Thompson. He's been there. So Maduro now is there. So it's expected to be represented by a court-appointed attorney for his initial hearing, and we'll see what happens. I think, given the love for Maduro on the left, I bet the money will come pouring in. Don't just wait. You know it is. You know the money will start pouring in of leftists who want Nicolas Maduro to be able to represent himself. So there was, I think, there was also a number of leftist protesters who showed up outside the Manhattan courthouse. They were denouncing the arrest of Maduro. And they were blasted as a-holes by other people from Venezuela. One man who was shouting at the protesters said, "You're an a-hole. You don't even know where Venezuela is." This is crazy. Also, there was an interesting piece. I saw this earlier this morning, and I didn't share it on the air this morning. But this is a piece at the New York Post by Richard Goldberg and Peter Durant. And they say the president's intervention in Venezuela, that it's offering needed hope to friends of freedom around the world and nervous traders in the oil market. Now understand this. The oil that the United States is going in and now taking, that belonged to the United States previously. That you had American oil companies who were in Venezuela. And so that oil belonged to American, interests previously. And this is why you hear President Trump, as he's talking about getting our oil back, that's what he's referring to. And this piece at the New York Post really, I think, points this out. They say for decades, Venezuela's socialist leaders have plunged their country into a black hole of poverty. Hugo Chavez promised voters unlimited riches. Nicolas Maduro, the hand-picked successor to Chavez, turned the whole thing into an economic nightmare. Last year, China purchased over 500,000 barrels a day from Venezuela. And so China needs Venezuela to fuel their economy. Meanwhile, Russia has wanted to keep the Maduro regime. So they were both Putin and Xi Jinping were eager to include Venezuela. So Trump now comes in and kicks that house of cards apart, right? Here comes Trump. Boom. Just once again, rewriting the rules. It's pretty crazy. There was a piece in this where they talk about that both Chavez and Maduro seized the infrastructure of American oil firms in Venezuela. And they ran the national economy right into the ground. So they seized that. You had American oil countries that were in there, and they seized it for themselves. So it's, I think under Maduro, Venezuela's economy shrunk by nearly 75%. Can you imagine that? I was talking last week about Iran and the inflation, and that it's up in excess of 40%, which is why you see people in Iran protesting. and their money just does not go very far at all. 40% inflation. So can you imagine the economy in Venezuela shrank by 75% and what that does to a country and the people then who live there? Wow. Just absolutely crazy stuff. There was one other piece that I want to share with you this morning, and I think many of you know Rob Schneider from his work both in films as well as on Saturday Night Live, his stand-up comedy. He was recently in Sioux Falls, was he not? Wasn't he just in Sioux Falls within the last few weeks? I think he was. He was somebody actually I would have loved not only to see, but to meet. And there's a great piece that was originally published by Fox News. I found it at the New York Post. And Rob Schneider's talking about what's going on in Hollywood, the rot in the soul of Hollywood. He said that Hollywood is dismantling itself and that one of the issues is they're blacklisting conservative comedians and conservative celebrities of all kinds. So Schneider said once he started, publicly talking about his viewpoints, which are right-wing, right-leaning, right? He's a conservative. So he started talking about his conservative political views, and he says as soon as he did that, acting opportunities dried up. No more acting. They went out the window. And he said, that was it for me starring in movies. The act of telling the truth in an age of authoritarianism, in an age of lies, is a courageous act. And he said, I'm not saying that I'm courageous. When I think of real courage, I think of in any major city, the cemeteries of people who gave what Lincoln describes, the last full measure of their devotion for this great land, he said. That is a sacrifice. I mean, the fact that I'll never make Deuce Bigalow 4, 5, and 6, I think is fine, he said. And he said that he's okay with it, but the fact that his views have impacted his career, he said, is a bummer. And I would agree. Absolutely right. He said, show business, right or wrong, they don't want any controversy. They know, they don't want you being mouthy or anything, and that makes sense. But I do think that at a certain point, if we're going to have a society and we're going to continue to have a free society, it's going to require people to step up and be courageous, he said. And he said the First Amendment allows for that. But freedom of speech does not. How many times have you heard me say this? This is absolutely true. Freedom of speech does not mean freedom from consequences, right? Freedom of speech does not mean freedom from consequences. And he said, you can ask Jimmy Kimmel. Yeah, that's absolutely right. He said it's going to cost you. And he talked about Charlton Heston as an example. Charlton Heston, of course, many of us know Charlton Heston for his work, I think especially in the Ten Commandments, among other films. But some of the Ben-Hur, some of the biblical-based works that Charlton Heston was in, I really love and still watch. Yeah, of course, love the Planet of the Apes, but he said he talked about Charlton Heston being rejected by liberals just because he happened to be a conservative. And he said, I think that's shameful. I think that's a rot in the soul of Hollywood. And I think today's blacklisting of conservatives is the same thing. I think at its core, it is adding to its destruction. And I think we are seeing Hollywood completely dismantle itself. and he thinks this is the beginning of the end for Hollywood. And I have thought about that as well, with the number of other companies that are out there. The parallel economy, right? You've heard a lot of conversation about the parallel economy. That is, okay, these companies that are going to persist in engaging in things and shoving it down the throats of Americans. Okay, we're just not going to participate. We are not going to consume those companies. We're going to start our own parallel economy where freedom prevails. Choice, you make your choices, that kind of thing, and we do not punish people because of what they believe and their point of view. And it's one of the reasons why I've been such a supporter of the parallel economy and these businesses that have taken a stand. When we see businesses that, and we've seen a number of them, who make choices that offend conservatives, we see businesses in the parallel economy then that really, hold on to that and say, hey, this is where we're at, and we're not going to insult you because of what you believe. And I think we will see more and more of the parallel economy. And that's a little bit what Rob Schneider is talking about. And I think when it comes to entertainment, you're seeing that. You're seeing more of these, whether they're biblically based movies and shows, or just more family based, shows, things that you can watch as a family without feeling that, you're sacrificing your children to the rot of Hollywood. I think we're going to see more and more of that. Okay, my friends, that's it for today. You have made it to the end of the video, so you are part of my gallery of champions. Special salute to the Bunker Brigade. Those are the folks that you see commenting, sharing their point of view, which I encourage. I love that. I love seeing what you're thinking and your perspectives on all of these things. Sometimes it shapes my own. So keep them coming, my friends. So until tomorrow, I'm underground and gone.